This is Kenny Horn at WMSC, and I am currently joined by famous still photographer Clay Enos. He has worked on a lot of films and done a lot of other work with just normal photography and been pretty much everywhere. Clay, thank you for sitting it down with us. And the reason that we're having you on right now is because you recently worked on Army of the Dead with Zack Snyder. Can you tell me about what it was like working on Army of the Dead compared to other of the films that you've worked on with him?
Well, I mean, this is the first time. First of all, thank you for having me. But to answer your question, this was the first time Zach was DP and as well as director, DP being director of photography, the cinematographer. And so he was just on all the time. I mean, he's normally energetic, effervescent, just spirited director. But this just allowed him, it really felt like we were in some sort of movie camp, a lot of returning crew, all of it. It's like family. And the environment was amazing. We shot in Netflix's studios in Albuquerque and then in Atlantic City. So it was just a ton of fun. And it had been a while, and after the sort of struggles and frustrations of Justice League, it was just great seeing Zach back at it. Not only was he the DP too, he was an operator, meaning he was holding a camera, right? So John Clothier was the A camera operator and Zach was the B camera. Not that there was much distinction, but and John Clothier has worked with us since Watchmen, just like me. Anyway, it was just a ton of fun. The movie is fun, and it from start to finish. So it's kind of nice having been there at the beginning and then watching it last week. Really, really kind of putting a bookend on a fantastic experience.
Yeah, I haven't gotten the chance to watch it yet. But can you tell me a little bit about those struggles with Justice League? You mentioned them briefly.
Well, they're well documented. I think the Vanity Fair article probably does the best job.
Yeah.
But it while filmmaking, or let's just say the movies in general, everybody brings a very personal approach. They have their favorite movies. These stories resonate within us. But for people who make movies, there's another layer. You give your time and your energy, years of your life in some cases, to a project, and when it gets sort of violated or dismissed, or the corporates, and I don't mean to blame anybody, there's any number of factors, but when the project doesn't go as planned, it can feel personal, and in this case it was quite personal. So a lot of us felt insulted and frustrated, and but ultimately there was vindication, and Zack Snyder's Justice League exists, and it's a masterpiece. Look, and even if that's not your genre, right? And a lot of people don't like superhero films. It's sort of an undeniable effort of filmmaking. There are shots in there. There's such attention to detail that whether you care or not about the Flash, it's still an impressive bit of workmanship, of artistic endeavor, of storytelling, and I think that's really what is feeling. We're all feeling vindicated that it exists in the world now, and everyone can sort of judge it for themselves. Again, genre aside, the film is quite something and really satisfying to watch for those of us who made it.
Yeah. Speaking of artistic ability and what he was able to do with that, I want to talk a little bit more about your work. And the opening title sequence of Army of the Dead that just came out includes your classic photo shoot style with handmade backdrop. How did this come about, and how much fun was this to see in the film?
That was those photos. Well, like they're holding photos, right? So he's got this Irving pen. Zach had this Irving pen backdrop made, and those are actually filmed. Those are filmed events, right? So we're dollying in on them holding photos. Those photos are ones that I made, but they're kind of props within that larger world. I think Zach and I both love that Irving pen style. That sort of, I don't know if it's a kind of acknowledgement of the medium, and they were fun to make. They're sometimes very stressful to make. There's one of the soccer mom who sort of finds her fate in that title sequence, shooting with natural light at sunset. and that kind of thing. And a lot of times we were rushing to get those shots, so there was a lot more stress making them than when I saw them in the movie. That happens a lot, you know. If it's freezing cold, sometimes I remember the scene more than if I wasn't. Anyway, you know, it's very self-referential, that title sequence, and I like that kind of thing. Zach and I both like that kind of thing. But I'm you know, being a still photographer, referencing an Irving Penn aesthetic is super satisfying and kind of fun to be part of.
Yeah.
Also, just so much more work than you see in the movie too.
Yeah, and I bet one of the benefits of being a still photographer is that you can release books of just the pictures and stuff like that. And I know you've done that a lot with other films and other things that you've worked on. Is there going to be something like that for Army of the Dead?
Yeah, there is. I think it comes out June 1st. Now, of course, I don't release those, right? My contract is such that I don't really own the pictures. They're owned by the studios.
Yeah.
But the filmmakers decided to work with Powerhouse, or excuse me, with Titan, a publisher they've made a lot of books with, and they've put something together that should be really fun to look at, with a bunch of behind the scenes photos and what have you. Even Netflix, you know, they have a Creating an Army of the Dead little featurette that's on the service right now, and they used my photos a ton inside that documentary, which was really satisfying. You know, a lot of times I make far more photos than anybody ever really sees, but Netflix seems quite clever, and their service is such, and their audience is such, that they can find photos and serve them to all the various constituents that are, you know, subscribed to their site. It's super cool. So book's great, but also the service itself is using my images, and that's fun.
Yeah. Where else are your pictures being put out? You mentioned Netflix
Gosh,
books, but where else?
you know, I saw that Zach and I both use Vero, True Social, the kind of ad-free, algorithm-free, data mining-free social network, and that he's been sharing some of my images there. That's really fun. And you know, his style in this film was super lensy and very shallow depth of field, and so I mimicked that as best I could with my camera and my lenses. So the images that he's shared so far sort of share some of those qualities. Really satisfying, and I think that's the primary place. Of course, all the fan sites and what have you, they trickle out in a million different ways. The conduits for image distribution are way beyond my pay scale, though, I must say. I make them. I don't know how they end up out there.
I want to circle back a little bit back to Justice League that we briefly talked about. We talked about how great it is for it to be a thing, because there was a lot of problems with it. But how does it feel for it to finally see it actually come to fruition?
Well, as I mentioned, it is really satisfying. Again, these are personal things. I've known Deborah Snyder since freshman year of college, you know, just random encounter, and we've been friends ever since. And so that kind of connection to the filmmakers and to a project is important. You know, for me, it's important. And in a perfect world, I would only work for Zach, right? If I was sufficiently financially independent, that's what I would do. And because, as I said, it's like working for friends. You know, college is the closest analogy, actually, that I can make to what it's like working with them. You know, when you've got a project and if I was back in film school, that's kind of what it feels like with just a bigger budget. Instead of having to work in the cafeteria as I did, or at the equipment cage, we've got, you know, millions of dollars to play with, and off they go. That said, you know, I am a very small part in this thing. I am the still photographer. I'm kind of the witness to the entire process. I don't actually make the movie. I make my little contributions, but ultimately, I'm the fly on the wall for the fans. I'm the first layer of the marketing messages. So, you know, it could be disappointing, or I could be sort of ego beaten, you know, that I'm not really important. But because I have this personal connection and I'm friends with the filmmakers, I give it my all, and I kind of ride the waves with them. And of course, when Justice League was destroyed by Joss Whedon and friends, we were hurt. Now we're not. Now I think the world can see that there was another story, and a more respectful story, a deeper story, a more nuanced story, and off we go.
Would you be able to tell me more about your friendship with Zach? Because that's the thing that's striking me right now, and I really like to hear that.
Well, look, I mean, the guy is like a charisma bomb. Obviously, I come circuitously, or not so circuitously, through his wife, right? So knowing each other since college, and that's a long time now. I graduated in 1991. So it, I've been, I was in the hospital when her children were born and that kind of stuff. So we're a tight knit group, a best of friends. And so meeting Zach, I remember actually the first time I spoke with him, it was coming out of the theater after watching his remake of Dawn of the Dead, and just hearing his voice and hearing his kind of sincerity and charm, as I congratulated him on such a fun movie. And then meeting him later, I think we ended up on the set of 300, and that's where I even first saw that there was a still photography gig available for photographers. And it's been just being on set with him. Like he's such a lovely person, such a creative force, such a attentive and considerate person. It's kind of hard not to like him. And then you combine that with Deborah, and off we go. It's hard to describe a friendship, that's been
Oh, it's yeah.
15 years in the making, but it's sincere. It's I miss them because I live in New York and they live in Los Angeles. When we work together every day on a movie, and then all of a sudden we disappear, we separate. It's always kind of bittersweet and sad. And then you talking to them on the phone or whatever, you pine for the next project.
Speaking of other projects, what are the next films that you'll be shooting?
Well, I'm sort of being fiscally irresponsible and waiting for Zach's next project to get going.
That's a good
Yeah,
way to do
I
it.
call it revenue-free living. That's what I'm involved in right now.
If you give an
And
official name to it, it's okay.
yeah, I don't like unemployed. I think revenue-free living kind of puts the emphasis on just going through your life and making sure you're still living just revenue-free. College kids should know a thing or two about that.
Oh, I'm a pro. I'm a pro at revenue-free living.
Don't get too used to it, but look, there is a freelancer is a feast or famine life, and you get used to it and you learn to save your money, which is always good advice for anybody. Buy some Bitcoin and stash it away, and then when things get lean, you've got a little cushion. I think that's how we go, and that allows me then to say wait for Zach's next project.
I like that you can really frame your career around your friendship. That seems like a point of success.
I look, yeah, that when you put it that way, for sure. Um, but I only was able to do that because I was kind of I was frugal, and I, instead of going to the bars, I'd buy a 40 and sit on the curb, with my buddies. save that money, right? And I've always been a traveler and an adventurer, and I've always sort of prioritized artistic endeavor over, say, wealth acquisition, but not being completely irresponsible. So I mean, there's a lot of nuance in there, but point being, at this point in my life, I'm 51. At some point you got to stop sort of sucking up to the man and decide that you need to have your life and to choose who you want to spend it with. I like to say that I'm sort of on the downhill of the roller coaster, the chunk 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 of going up,
Yeah.
where you sort of make some sacrifices, and it is what it is. But now I got my hands in the air, and I'm trying to enjoy the ride.
Yeah. I'd like to ask you about another relationship in your life. Your wife Christine, she creates and makes jewelry. Creativity, it runs throughout your household. And what's it like
Yeah,
being married to someone that's just as equally creative as you are, but in a completely different field?
it's a ton of fun to live in a house where both of us are creative. I'm a little bit older than Christine, so she sometimes needs guidance. But since I've sort of lived the artistic life for most of my adult life, I can help her through some of those sort of lulls in your self-esteem, or what have you, or sort of frustrations. But ultimately, they're worth it because the flexibility of schedules and of location dependency are, lifted by, because my work takes me places, and this way she can kind of take her tools and still be creative, still design, no matter where we are. So living two artists living together. Um, it's not necessarily the stuff of sitcoms or of rom-coms, but it's we're making the best of it, and it's quite enjoyable.
It's a lot
I
of revenue
can't.
free living.
Yeah, it's a lot of revenue free living. Yeah, but it'd be different. I mean, if we were I've done the 9 to 5, right, which is really the 8 to 6 or more. It's important maybe to have some of that, but then if it isn't for you, to really eke it out. And being an artist isn't easy, but it can be deeply satisfying, psychically. And that, we live in a world where a lot of people are sort of mentally damaged and beaten, and no shortage of that now after a year and a half of face diapers and what have you. So I think it's I think it's really important for folks to sort of evaluate where they want to be in their lives and make steps towards achieving that. And I don't mean that to be some sort of you know it's not impossible. Just stay focused.
Yeah.
I always say you take your passion and you blend it with patience and perseverance, and you should be able to outlast those who gave up.
That's a funny way to think about it, but I
don't be
really
the
like that.
don't be the guy to give up. Don't be the one giving up. Stay focused. Stay passionate, or feed your patience and passion, and feed your patience and perseverance with your passion. It doesn't always have to be in making the thing, right?
Yeah.
Kind of braid those three things together, and I think you'll be all right, and you'll be happy. You might not be rich, but you'll be happy.
That's the more important thing.
It's a cliche, but it's true.
It is true. We mentioned very briefly before Vero, something that you're a part of, and so is Zach. And can
Yeah.
you tell me more about being a social ambassador for that?
Yeah, I mean, we're friends with the guy who founded it or co-founded it, and to me, it just everyone's seen maybe the social dilemma, and everyone was talking about it, but no one changed a thing. Everybody, the network effect and the addictions of Instagram and Facebook and what have you, are so deep that I just decided I'm giving up Facebook. I'm going to abandon my Instagram, and I'm going to use this service that mimics my real life experience of friendship better than anything I've used. Your friends aren't an audience. Your friends are a resource, and your friends are an inspiration. And I think we need to return to those ideas. Everybody's distorted their experience of their lives through mediating and pretending and sharing, but really, it's Vero to me solves the problem of bringing true friendship and true social engagement into a digital realm, right, as best as possible. Obviously, the real thing is what you should really seek, and then Vero then mimics that the best of any of them. And look, it's free for now, right? And it would be free for anybody who signs up. Later on, it'd be subscription based, and I think we're going to see more of that from the other services. So get ready. Anyway, I think they're just ahead of the curve. It's really beautiful. It's elegant. It's smart. It is what it is. And I'm super anti Facebook and Instagram, and I don't know why more people aren't, but I understand the addictions.
Yeah, I like that you base it around friendship, and I think that's been a running theme throughout this whole talk that I've had with you and just your career. So thank you for sitting down with me, Clay. I had a great time talking to you.
Likewise. Well, all the best to you, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course. If you're just tuning in now, I just wrapped up an interview with Clay Enos on 90.3 WMSC Upper Montclair. I've been Kenny Horn. Thank you for listening, and make sure to tune in to our other shows. Goodbye.